It's been 6 months since 2 Boston firefighters perished in a fast-moving fire on Beacon Street in the Back Bay. Welders working without a permit at the building next door are blamed for sparking the fire, which spread to 9 alarms. Lieutenant Edward Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy died after becoming trapped in the basement. In recorded radio calls from that day, they can be heard calling for more water. We now know the fire hose Walsh and Kennedy were using burned in the fire. Now Kennedy's mother is working to ensure other firefighters don't lose their lives because of that kind of equipment failure. Kathleen Crosby Bell created the Last Call Foundation in memory of her son. And welcome to Greater Boston. Welcome, Kathy. So some of these things that the foundation is trying to raise money for, I've never even heard of. And one of them is a fire hose. It's more or less fireproof.
Exactly. It's tragic that Michael and Ed had to die that way when I'm sure the technology exists today. We just need to find it and use it in this application. And it can be done. Other firefighters don't have to suffer that particular danger.
So their fire hose is essentially melted. They were calling for water. They couldn't get water through the hose.
It burned through.
And the other idea you have is this kind of rolling canteen, which is also something I'd never heard of, where there would be comfort, there would be food, water, dry socks, new gloves. I mean, something that day was particularly awful. It was really cold. It was really windy. They'd gotten wet. Not just Michael and Ed, but all the firefighters working on that were affected in some way.
Every fire that they go to, someone may suffer exhaustion, dehydration. Depending on what the weather conditions are, the Boston Sparks Association will respond, provide cooling fans if it's hot, or a warm tent if it's cold. The ice can actually form on their bunker gear, and they're freezing. So just a brief respite, a drink to rehydrate, perhaps something to eat. It will help prevent the kind of exhaustion that sends so many of them to the hospital.
Yeah, misery factor.
Really, yes.
So now, would that rolling canteen be used all over the Greater Boston area, just in Boston? How would it work?
Well, the Boston Sparks Association responds to the entire Greater Boston area. They will respond anywhere that they are requested. Worcester has a state-of-the-art truck, as does Providence, yes. I believe Dunkin' Donuts donated that truck following the Worcester fire. And they actually were here during Michael and Ed's funerals. And so I saw the truck. It's amazing. And Boston's working out of an old, abandoned ambulance. It's woefully inadequate.
How much money do you need to raise for the canteen alone?
For that, probably $300,000. But the work that they do makes a significant difference. Cooling those fellas off, their body temperatures can rise to 102 degrees on average. And just cooling them down with the misting fans makes a significant impact. So it's well worth the money.
So you also want to purchase an industrial washer-dryer that will take care of smoke-damaged clothes, because anybody who's ever sat near a campfire, much less an inferno like that, knows that it permeates your clothing.
It does, and one of the biggest issues that has, I think this knowledge is relatively new, the residue from flame retardants, as they finally reach the point of combustion, they vaporize, and that will stick to the bunker gear. And it is extremely toxic and so dangerous. So if the bunker gear is not laundered on a regular basis after every major fire, they're being exposed to that every time they touch the gear.
So every time they go back at it, and then nothing like that exists right now?
Well, they do in Boston have a program. I believe it's twice a year. I could be wrong on that. But when the firefighter goes on vacation or an extended leave, they will put their gear in to be laundered, and it will be returned to them.
Now, How do you feel about how the investigation has been handled? Are you satisfied? Do you think there should be criminal charges?
Well, I think I'm biased.
Very hard. Yes, I know.
I think
I would be too.
Yeah, I think I'm biased. I think I need to wait. I know a lot of people are working hard to figure out exactly what happened, determine exactly what we can do from here, and hopefully they'll be completed soon, and we can figure out where to go from there.
Because the welding company, as you know, has been issued a fine of $58,000, but it stopped there, and it felt, just from my perch, it felt like it fell short. Why would they do that and not go the next step?
Well, I think until the final report is issued, nobody's going to take the next step. Hopefully, that will be soon.
Your son was really remarkable. I didn't know really that he had been a Marine for 6.5 years. He was part of the Big Brother Association. I mean, he spent a lot of time with young people. He was really a champion. He was really a volunteer his entire life.
He was. I think Michael had ADHD before it was popular, and he liked to keep busy. And it was very good for him. He was active in pretty much anything that somebody could convince him was a good cause. He would do what he could to help.
He said something once like, I'm either going to be going to the White House or I'm going to be in jail. that's my career path, and he opted to go the White House. Right.
Well, we did have our moments where we were worried about he might go the other way. But I was tough on him, and he later thanked me for that and told me he was glad that I set that standard and wouldn't waver. So, and there were times, believe me, I wondered, gee, was I too harsh? But he really rose to the expectation.
Since I've been in Boston, the number of fires have diminished just exponentially. It used to be everything was burning, hotels and houses, and maybe it's sprinklers, maybe it's other things, but maybe we had sort of gotten, except for the Back Bay, a lot of those antique buildings, a lot of them have burned. But did you ever feel like a sense of complacency because it just didn't seem that dangerous anymore?
I do. I feel as if the focus is elsewhere, and there are a lot of things that need doing. That's for sure. Boston is an old city, and the infrastructure can crumble if it's not maintained. But with the advances that are being made today technologically, I think the fire department needs a lot of focus and attention, and we can't afford to wait because there are lives being lost to heart disease. There was a time there was a period where Boston firefighters were having heart attacks on average every 3 or 4 weeks. And they've worked hard to raise awareness. However, just the job that they do, it's going to happen. Sure. But the cancer rate, Michael was devastated last winter when one of the firefighters from his house was diagnosed in the late fall and didn't want to tell his family because he didn't want to ruin the holidays. And he died by the end of January.
That's awful. Well, as you know, I got to briefly meet your son. Easter of 2013, responding to yet another false alarm at my house. It was very embarrassing. Of course, there he was so handsome, and that's why we were all laughing. Kathy Crosby Bell, thanks so much for being with us.